What do people think? What do politicians think? What do the experts think? Every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, Real Politics with Malkhaz Gulashvili.
Thank you for speaking with us. It's a privilege to interview Alex Sapir, a highly accomplished American businessman whose father, Tamir Sapir, was born in Georgia, married there, and spent his formative years in Tbilisi. Did your father often share stories or reflections about Georgia with you?
Well, yes. Well, both my parents did, and it was obviously growing up in Georgia was very different back then than today. Living under the Soviet era versus now a democracy, but they very much always focused upon how strong our culture, our values, our sense of family are. And I'd say that even though I was the first one in my family born in New York, I really grew up in a Georgian house with the New York address.
During the Soviet era, Tamir Sapir emigrated from Georgia to the United States with his wife. How did he manage to build a successful career in a country often described as a land of opportunity, especially given that the private enterprise was virtually non-existent and even discouraged in Soviet Union? And challenges, what did he face in adapting to such different economic system?
It's really a unique story of my parents' journey from Georgia to the U.S. They basically spent 2 years in Israel from 1973 to 1975 when they left Georgia. My sisters were born there, and they had this vision to be in the United States. And they traveled throughout Europe to try to gain status to enter the U.S., which obviously was not easy for Soviets or former Soviets to enter the U.S. So after a 2-year journey, quite exhaustive, quite difficult, but still with hope, they were accepted into a program that essentially brought immigrants from the Soviet Union to the U.S. And they landed in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, Louisville, Kentucky is probably not the first city or second city, or even the 10th city that anyone from the former Soviet Union or even today in Georgia is thinking about. It's a smaller city in the U.S., but they were set up in order to, start a life. My mother was teaching my father English. My father was working during the day in a hardware store, and at night he was a bus driver. And they together decided that the American dream can come alive because it was already a more comfortable situation than they had. And my father was very determined. And he made that hardware store cleaner and work more efficiently than it ever has. And the owner of the store liked him very much and appreciated his hard work. And gifted him a Volkswagen Beetle, so he'd be able to come to work easier. So after a little while, my father told my mother that he wants to go to New York, and the better life for them will be in New York. So they agreed to drive to New York, where my father started driving a taxi. And he had a checker cab. I don't know if for anybody that's ever been to New York in the 80s or 90s, the checker cab was a really interesting one. It was still yellow, but it had checkers everywhere, and it had a jump seat, kind of like the London cabs do. And he was so brilliant in the way he thought about approaching work. Is he created a couple routes that ended up being a lot more efficient for him to work and make a lot more money. And he was able to work less hours, driving a taxi, and make more money than most of his other peers. Eventually, he started making and saving enough money where he ended up buying his taxi cab medallion, which is the form of ownership of your cab. And decided one day, he was a big music lover. He decided that one day he wanted to buy a stereo for the house. And in New York City at the time, all the electronic stores were owned by Israelis, but there was one Russian-speaking electronic store. So he went to that one, obviously. And he made friends with the owner, Sam Kislin, and they liked each other very much. My father invited him to to his home. I wasn't born yet. To his home, where my mother would cook a beautiful Georgian dinner, and Sam obviously accepted. He came over, and they became really good friends at that point. Only over some hachapuri and hikali, and obviously some good wine. Sam said to him, he said, I really like you. You have a really interesting way about yourself. I'd like you to be my partner. So my father was quite surprised that, he's offering him this opportunity. My father said, yes, but I'm not sure I have enough money to invest in your business. So Sam told him that he could borrow money against a taxi cab medallion that he bought, which he did, and bought into the electronics store. And that was in the late 70s. And so that electronics store ended up being really a gateway for, and this is much later in the mid 80s, a gateway for all Soviets that came to New York to come buy electronics from a Russian speaking or Georgian speaking store. And he had some of the most important people from the Soviet era coming into his store, and he became very friendly with a lot of them. And the store was doing quite well. In the 80s, electronics was probably more important than gold. It was the first time that you can, not only take pictures of your family, but take video of your family, have music in the house, have portable music, and record your family and watch it over and over again. So electronics were extremely, extremely important at the time. Especially, it was very difficult to get in the Soviet Union. So anybody that came to New York came to his store and came happy.
Thank you.
Your professional journey was shaped by your father's legacy. Today, you are a real estate developer, investor, and the president and the CEO of Sapir organization. If not for your father's influence, do you believe you would have still chosen real estate as your primary field?
So I'm going to quickly answer with no. There's no way I would have probably entered this world without my father. But I want to continue on a little bit of his story. So, from the electronics store, he gained many relationships in the former Soviet Union. And I was fortunate that from a very early age, he would take me everywhere he could, as long as I wasn't in school. So, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it was an interesting time for us. My father was actually in Moscow at the time, and he was incommunicable for a long period of time, which we were very nervous about and very sad about, and we unfortunately thought the worst because we couldn't hear from him. And luckily, one day the phone rang, and we were told that our father is on a plane coming back to New York. And so we went to the airport to greet him and meet him, and we were full of tears because it was a pretty traumatic period of time. And he came back very happy, smiling, and he basically was able to used those connections that he had from the electronics store to start working on building, bigger business in, now Russia. And so I was at the time 11 years old, and he started trading oil and fertilizers and lots of commodities, and doing, big projects in Russia. And he would tell me very much about it. So as I was, going through my teenage years studying, he would and he also obviously started buying real estate in New York at the time. He would always show me, rent rolls of office buildings, and he would show me different, documents as it related to his work that I would read, and I was intrigued by it. Although I grew up really not wanting anything handed to me. And I started to, I studied in London, as well as in New York. And while I was in London, I wanted to pursue my own career. My own career was following the footsteps of my father as well, though, in the oil trading business. I decided that I was going to live in London and try to carry out my business there. And then one day he called me and tried to convince me that if the business was, available for me today, he'd still be in that business. And that's why he's ventured into real estate. So we worked something out where, we would have a partnership, and I would come to really learn the business under him. And then, through the years, I think we developed, a very interesting relationship where there was a lot of tough love, but it was really, I'd say, very loving tough love. It was never that tough, but it was a beautiful way to teach me in a way that I needed to, really develop to be a man, or the man I am today. And he had a very, really beautiful approach to things. It didn't matter how much we argued. Every morning he'd wake up and call me and treat as though nothing happened the day before. And sometimes it infuriated me because I knew I knew that I was right about a certain subject the night before that we argued, but he always approached it with love. And he always was teaching me, and he always wanted me to learn. And he was a really brilliant man. He had incredible foresight, and he was my best friend. We spoke probably somewhere around 20 to 30 times a day. So yes, I don't think I would probably be in the position I am today in real estate without his guidance, without him obviously creating what he created. But I'm not sure what I would do, because I have a little bit of a artistic side to me as well as the business savvy side. I have a lot of obviously great relationships. Maybe I would just be a developer and less a real estate investor as well. But it's an interesting question that I've never really actually thought about, because I'm so in real estate today that I don't know. I don't know if I could ever be a tech guy today.
In 2006, you became CEO of the Sapir organization, the real estate owner, operator, and the developer founded by your father. That same year, you partnered with Andre Balazs on the redevelopment of 15th William Street and collaborated with Trump's organization on Trump Soho at 246 Spring Street. When Trump Soho opened in 2010, it became the first five-star hotel in downtown Manhattan. Do you personally know Donald Trump? And in your view, which personal or professional qualities most contributed to his success in both business and politics? And also, are you also interested in politics?
Well, okay, so let's start with, I guess, yes, I was very fortunate to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to go with my father to many meetings, and my father and Donald were quite good friends. and we went to the office every so often. And I was able to watch our president at a very early age, from a very social and from a social standpoint, because we had never done business with him. And then in 2005, actually, we bought a piece of property in Soho, 246 Spring Street. And we partnered with the Trump Organization in 2006. And I had, I think, the great honor to not only be partners with our president at the time, well, he wasn't president at the time, but with our current president at the time, but also his children, who were also around my age and also growing in their own family business. And so, working with Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric, we developed a building at 246 Spring Street that probably fit a more modern mold to what the Trump Organization normally did. We used a great architect, David Rockwell, that designed the building that we think today still looks incredibly well. And I'd say that we're very fortunate to have the president we have today. My interest in politics is very little as far as where I would want to place myself in politics. But my interest in following politics, I think, are very high, because it's very important to understand how your country is going to operate politically, as well as other countries work. We're living in a very global world where many things affect everything. So yes, I do follow politics quite well, but it's definitely not something I plan to ever be doing in my future roles. I like doing business. I love building buildings, and yeah, I think I'd be happy to help governments, accomplish their goals, but definitely never in the traditional political capacity.
Thank you.
In 2014, you successfully repositioned the 2.3 million square foot property at 11 Madison Avenue, originally acquired by your father, for 675 million. The building attracted major tenants such as Sony, William Morris, Endeavor, and Yelp, and significantly diversifying its tenant base. Would you consider this as a defining milestone for your organization?
Yes, the first most important part was my father's foresight to acquire the property. In 2003, when the property was on the market, it was fairly competitive bid, and the only way to to be able to acquire the property was to overpay, and at that time, a $675 million price tag was the second highest in New York at the time. The highest at the time was 1.4 billion, which was a GM building, which was on Fifth Avenue, very different location in New York. But 11 Madison was the acquisition there, was a very, very, very important one for our family, and one that we didn't have a lot of time. We went to contract we went to contract right before Thanksgiving, and we had to close right before Christmas. So to do a mega transaction, the second largest in New York at the time, that year, within basically 30 days, with two of the most important holidays in the U.S., was a very difficult task. But my father put together an incredible team to execute, and we were able to do it. And then throughout the years of owning the property, we always felt very comfortable that Credit Suisse, which was the main tenant, would never really leave that neighborhood. And then in 2000 and I'd say late 2013, early 2014, I got a call from the head of real estate, Andy Federbush. And he said, look, we're getting serious inquiry, serious motivation to move to Hudson Yards, which was being developed by the Related Group. And we may possibly move out of your building. So I obviously called for a meeting right away. We started discussing, the attributes of staying, obviously, in the location that they were in. They had built a beautiful campus in the neighborhood. They have been very much a part of how that neighborhood flourished. There were obviously many staff, many board members, many executives that were living within that neighborhood. And moving would probably disrupt a lot of, what they would want to do. Especially Hudson Yards was a beautiful planned project, but it would have to live through many, many, many years of construction. Whereas Madison Square Park, where 11 Madison was already a neighborhood that was very mature and had very little disruption from, a construction standpoint. So what we agreed with Credit Suisse was for them to downsize, because at that time everybody was looking at where headcounts needed to be, and so they didn't need as much space as they were in. And I had agreed to let them off of roughly 600,000-700,000 square feet of space at the top of the building, so I would be able to regain, call it the best part of the building. And I had the middle part of the building as well vacant. But my main goal was to first lease to Credit Suisse and set a new baseline rent for the building. And that's what we did. We ended up doing a great deal with Credit Suisse. We were able to bring Sony from 550 Madison Avenue, which is where their headquarters had been for a very long time, that they had sold to the Shetreat family. And we were able to coordinate a very complicated job of moving Credit Suisse, creating a sky lobby for Sony and give them their own dedicated entrance, and make sure that Sony moved in time for them not to have any holdover rent at 550 Madison. So we were able to accomplish it all. And then William Morris and Yelp were also in the market. We were able to attract them, Fidelity as well. So we did literally 2.3 million square feet of leasing in that 1 year. We were the most, we did the most leasing in New York City, and it was all within one property. So it was a really interesting time for us. It was a really challenging, but really, really, really great time. I'm very proud of our work, the work that we did there.
Thanks.
In 2015, you facilitated the sale of a major asset to SL Green for $2.6 billion, making the largest single building transaction in the U.S. history at the time. In May 2020, you also made a strategic offer to acquire approximately 13.29% of Sapir Corp shares valued at around $4.3 million, with the goal of taking the company private amid pandemic-driven market volatility. How were you able to remain operational and successful during the COVID-19 period when many global business struggled or shut down?
Well, first, let me talk about the sale to SL Green. So we obviously, after all the leasing that we did, we think we created a lot of value. It was a period of time in where interest rates started to rise a bit. So our partner CIM and us decided that we were going to put the property in the market, and we had a very extensive process that started at a much lower number than 2.6 billion. But SL Green was actually the owner of 1 Madison, We thought that they were the most strategic buyer, and they were the ones that obviously were willing to pay the most for the asset. I think they made an incredible deal. They were incredible to work with. I know Mark Holliday very well. He's a great CEO. They're the largest landlord in all of New York. It was a really impressive accomplishment to be able to sell the asset at that price. And today is still the record I guess the U.S. Single asset sale, 2.6 billion. As far as navigating through COVID, was a really interesting time. I think we'll all look back and say, yeah, it probably wasn't a great idea to shut down the world for so long. I never really believed that it would be that long that we would be dealing with COVID. I knew that the virus would be problematic and hurt and kill and affect many people and families. But I also didn't think that shutting down would be the solution. Because if you look at least I studied the US. If you look at human pattern movements during that period of time, you had roughly 30 to 45% of the population moving around, whether they were essential workers, employees that needed to move around, hospitals, doctors. There was just a lot of movement that it wasn't really a lockdown. It was a lockdown for many, but the virus would continue to spread. And I know I was at the time in Miami, and we had a 3-month lockdown that I think the government finally realized it doesn't make sense to lock down. The virus needs to go through its cycle. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Unfortunately, many countries were locked down and suffered greatly for it. But obviously, COVID changed the dynamic of big cities. New York City completely emptied out. People weren't coming to the office anymore. People weren't staying in hotels. New York City was a ghost town, and it was very unfortunate because it didn't need to happen. And was a tough time to be in New York City real estate and to be in real estate in general. The Miami real estate market was booming. We had a project that was extremely successful, which I'm sure you'll ask me about later. So depending on where you were in the world, Dubai, I think, saw great benefits from, I'd say, bad governments or wrong decisions by governments, shutting down cities for too long. The city, our major cities around the world are important lifelines for people, even for people that don't live in those cities. And we need to keep our cities open, especially, the big major gateway cities around the world. They're 24-hour cities, and they need to stay 24-hour cities because from a financial, economic, social, and cultural standpoint, they need to shine, and we need to protect those cities. We didn't do it. I hope we've learned our lesson for the future. It obviously caused a lot of pain as well. With inflation, we had interest rates rise to really high levels and probably stayed at very high levels for too long. So the impact of COVID wasn't just a 2-year period or 3-year period. It's basically, I think in many ways, real estate is still feeling the impact of what COVID did to our world.
Think.
In December 2020, your firm sold a luxury penthouse at Arte by Antonio Citerio in surface for 33 million, setting a local record for $4,300 per square foot. In January 2022, you announced the sale of 16 luxury residences totaling 225 million, breaking multiple regional records. Later that year, in December 2022, you refinanced the office properties at 260 and 261 Madison Avenue for 326 million, one of the largest office refinancings of the COVID era. As the US economy now faces a potential turn down, what do you see as the biggest challenges for the real estate operators today?
Well, we're actually now going through a better period of time. The hard period of time is, as I said, I'd say from 22 to 25, 24 maybe. 25 started to have a little bit more life, but I'd say that 26 is going to be a good year. Arte was envisioned to be exactly as it was, a very boutique building that was only really focused upon giving people a real sense of living in luxury. But residences that gave you the feeling of living like in a hotel, but in much bigger units, with all hotel services and amenities, without there ever being a hotel. And Arte, I think, proved that there was a desire for people to live that way. And we brought in Antonio Citerio because he's one of my favorite architects, and his partner Patricia Weil as well, and I have a great deal of respect for them. And what they designed for us was really unique and really beautiful. And we finished that building right before COVID began, right before lockdowns, and once people were able to walk into the building, they really appreciated what we built. And so we were able to break records because I think we built the most beautiful building. We used finishes and created amenities that very few have ever seen, especially for the scale of the project. We were first in that respect. And the architecture, the use of space, the way the building was really thought out, was really what was appealing, as well as obviously the location. We were next to the Four Seasons Surf Club, and we're very proud of what we did there. And we're working on doing that over and over again. And as far as our financing is concerned, at 260 and 261 Madison, was a tough year to get anything done. People were not in office buildings, and luckily we have a very strong relationship with J.P. Morgan and Mac Real Estate. And they believed that we would be able to navigate through whatever territories we were going through. And they gave us the financing. It was, at the time, I think, definitely within the top 2, 3, or 4 financings in the country. At the time, no banks really wanted to talk about office. So we were very, very proud to be able to have gotten financing at the time.
Thanks.
You're also known for your philanthropic work, supporting organizations such as Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Tamir Sapir Basketball Foundation, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, the American Cancer Society, the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, and Shareh Zedek Medical Center in Jerusalem. In an era when many business leaders focus solely on profit, what role does philanthropy play in your life, and does it bring you personal fulfillment?
Yes, 100% it does. Again, this was living with my parents. Both my parents were very philanthropic. My father, I think, instilled in all of us, even if you don't have, you should help, and when you do have, you need to help more. And I'd say that charity is something that all of us should do. Doesn't matter at what level we are in life, and it's I think a necessary mindset for the world today. And does it give me self fulfillment? Yeah, 100% it does. And for my family, and it's a very important part of who we are.
Thanks.
We understand that you have visited Georgia and Tbilisi, including the home and the neighborhood where your father was born and raised. How did that experience affect you personally? And do your future plans include potential projects or engagement in Georgia?
So it was my first time and only time before my last visit was in 1985. I was 5 years old. I have certain memories, not many. Um, so being able to come 40 years later was very meaningful for me. And being able to see where my father was raised and grew up, and where my mother was as well, hit me in a way that probably wouldn't hit me when I was would be a younger child. Obviously, the loss of my father is something that pains me every day. I miss him greatly, and I have my aunt who always reminds us all of great stories with him. But being able to be there and see it, from I guess a very adult lens versus a childhood lens, was very impactful for me. It hit me in a way that I think brought out a lot of pride on what he was able to do, where he started, and what he was able to accomplish in his life. And it brought me to the realization that I want to do more for our country. I want to be able to help the country's initiatives, whether it be from doing real estate deals, or bringing companies to the country. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I definitely believe that I was brought there to do things in the country that will be beneficial for the country.
Thank you.
President Trump has at times relied on business figures such as Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner as envoys in complex international negotiations rather than career diplomats. Critics argue that his approach commodifies global politics. Do you believe that business leaders bring fresh and pragmatic perspective to diplomacy? Do you know Witkoff or Kushner personally, and how would you characterize their negotiation approach?
So I believe the success that we're having today in the world is because our president is not a lifelong politician. He is a businessman. I think the problems that we've lived through for so many decades has been because we've had lifelong politicians leading, the world. I personally know Jared and Steve very well. I'm very proud to be able to call them friends, and I think they're exactly the right people for the job that they've been given. And I think that our president is brilliant in the team that he's created to carry out his agenda, and his agenda is really for the good of the world. And he is a president that wants peace, and he wants countries to flourish. I think, you know, obviously we put America first because that's the country that he's the president for. But he's also very, first of all, he's brilliant. Second, he's very aware that as countries grow economically, that they will be able to be better partners for the rest of the world. And we want to see different regions be able to live not only peacefully, but also with economic growth. Because that economic growth becomes better for the culture, it becomes better for social impacts. And living a better life, I think, is where this world is headed with technology, AI, and we want to. I think what the U.S. wants to do today is very noble in the mindset of creating peace, and giving people a better opportunity to live. Certain countries have it harder than others, and global growth will make it a little easier for people. And I'm very excited about where it's headed, and I respect our administration, and I respect obviously my friends Jared and Steve for the hard work that they're putting in, and it's very noble cause.
Thank you.
Georgia is hopeful about renewing strategic relations with the Trump administration. Our President Gulashvili met with them. In your view, is there a realistic opportunity for restoring the strategic partnership between the United States and Georgia that was suspended during the Biden administration?
100%. The U.S. Always had a great relationship with Georgia, and I'm not sure why the Biden administration decided to work against Georgia, but I'm very hopeful and confident that the U.S. and Georgia relations will be restored, and hopefully stronger than ever.
Thank you very much.
What do people think? What do politicians think? What do the experts think? Every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, Real Politics with Malkhaz Gulashvili.